Chapter 3. The moment settled quietly after Jessica spoke. I want to try. It wasn't loud, it wasn't certain in the way confidence usually sounded, but it was real. Pearl simply nodded, as though nothing more was needed. Outside, the breeze moved gently across the balcony, carrying with it the faint sound of the bay below. The light had shifted slightly now, no longer early morning, but moving steadily into the day. A soft knock came at the door. Pearl glanced toward it. "Come in," she called. The door opened slowly. Mrs. Edna Roberts stepped inside. She was small in stature, but there was a presence about her that filled the room without effort. Her white hair framed her face softly, and her clothing carried a warmth of color that gently stood out. "Well now," she said, "I thought I might find you in." Pearl smiled. "You're always welcome, Edna." Edna stepped inside, her eyes briefly taking in the room before settling on Jessica. "And who might this be?" "Jessica," Pearl said. "She'll be joining us here at Pearl's Haven." Edna's face brightened. "Well, welcome, dear." Jessica stood slightly. "Hi." Edna nodded gently. She handed a book to Pearl. "Thought you might want this back." "The one on the Holy Spirit?" "That's the one," Edna said. "Gave me a few things to think on." Pearl smiled as she set it aside. Edna turned her attention back to Jessica, not evaluating, not questioning, just seeing her. "I expect we'll have a conversation soon," Edna said gently. Jessica felt something steady in the words. "I'd like that," she replied. Edna nodded once, as if that was enough. After a few quiet moments, she made her way toward the door. "I have to love you and leave you," she said with a small smile. "Housework doesn't do itself." Pearl smiled. "Come again soon." "Oh, I will." And then she was gone. The room quieted. Jessica sat slowly. "She's different?" Pearl offered. Jessica nodded. "Yes." Pearl smiled faintly. "She meets people where they are." Jessica looked back out over the bay. Nothing had been fixed. Nothing had been resolved. But something had begun. She wasn't outside anymore. She wasn't looking in from a distance. She was here. And for the first time in a long while, she wasn't alone. The next few days passed quietly. Jessica returned several times to Pearl's Haven, helping where she could while getting to know the residents and the gentle rhythm of life within the building. The paperwork was completed, practical arrangements were made, and little by little, the uncertainty that had followed her for so long began to loosen its grip. When moving day arrived, it felt less like stepping into something unfamiliar and more like coming home. The front entrance of Pearl's Haven opened quietly as Jessica stepped inside, her small suitcase held close at her side. The space felt familiar already, not because she knew it well, but because she had been welcomed into it. Across from the office, just as Pearl had explained, was her apartment. The door stood slightly open. Jessica hesitated for only a moment, then stepped inside. The apartment was simple, a small kitchen to one side, a sitting area with an empty wall where furniture would eventually go, a narrow hallway leading to a bedroom and bath. It was quiet, empty, and for a brief moment, that emptiness pressed in on her. Not in a frightening way, but in a way that reminded her just how much of her life had changed. "You won't be empty for long, dear." Jessica turned. Edna stood in the doorway, a canvas bag looped over her arm, as though she had just come from somewhere, or had known exactly when to arrive. "I figured you might be here," she said, stepping inside without hesitation. "Thought I'd stop by and see what you still need." Jessica let out a small breath. "I don't even know where to start." Edna gave a soft, knowing nod. "That's all right. Nobody ever does." She set the bag on the counter and began taking things out. Dish towels, a set of mugs, a few small kitchen items. "People have already started bringing things by," Edna added, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. Jessica looked up surprised. "They have?" "Mm-hmm," Edna said. "Word travels quickly here, especially when someone new needs a beginning." There was a gentle knock at the open door. A man from one of the upstairs units stepped in, carrying a small side table. "Figured you might find a use for this," he said. Another followed not long after with a chair. Then a folded set of linens appeared. Each person stayed only a few minutes, just long enough to offer what they had, exchange a few kind words, and move on. No one lingered. No one asked questions. No one made it feel like charity. Jessica stood quietly in the middle of the room as it began, slowly, steadily, to fill. A chair beside the window, a table near the wall, a blanket folded neatly at the arm. Practical things, everyday things, but given in a way that felt different. "I don't know how to thank them," Jessica said softly. Edna shook her head. "You don't have to," she replied. "Just take care of what's been given." Jessica looked down for a moment, letting that settle. From the hallway, Pearl's voice could be heard speaking with someone in the office. Business, steady, focused, life continuing. Jessica glanced toward the sound, then back into the room. She wasn't being watched. She wasn't being managed. She was simply being given space to begin. Edna moved toward the sink, turning the tap slightly. It dripped. She gave a small sigh. "Well now, that won't do." Jessica looked up. "It's been doing that all morning," Jessica said. Edna smiled. "That's all right. We've got someone for that." She turned toward the open doorway. "Pearl," she called gently. Pearl appeared a moment later, pausing just inside the hall. "What is it, Edna?" "That faucet started acting up again. Think James might be around to take a look?" Pearl nodded. "I'll have him come down." Edna gave a satisfied nod, as though that settled it entirely. Jessica watched the exchange, something about it quietly grounding. "James?" she asked. "Pearl's husband," Edna said easily. "He keeps this place running just as much as she does, if truth be told. Fixes things, looks after the grounds, whatever needs doing." Jessica nodded slowly. Another piece of the place coming into view. A gentle knock sounded at the open door. A woman in her early 30s leaned in with an easy smile, a young boy and girl waiting patiently behind her. Her messy bun and pink cheeks gave the impression of someone who is always on the move, never standing still. "Edna," she said, "the spaghetti's almost ready. The kids wanted to know if you're still coming." Edna smiled warmly. "I wouldn't miss it." The little girl waved shyly. "Hi," she said to Jessica. Jessica smiled back. "Hello." Edna turned toward her. "Jessica, this is Janet. She lives upstairs with Tiffany and Sam." "It's nice to meet you," Janet said warmly. "We're glad you're here." "Thank you," Jessica replied. "It's nice to meet all of you too." "We'll let you two finish settling in," Janet said. "See you in a few minutes, Edna." With another friendly smile, she and the children disappeared back into the hallway, their quiet chatter fading as they walked away. Jessica watched them go. "Everyone seems to know everyone here," she said. Edna smiled. "That's kind of the idea." By late afternoon, the apartment no longer felt empty. It wasn't fully furnished. It wasn't perfect. But it held something far more important, evidence that she was not alone. Edna rested her hands lightly on the back of one of the chairs, looking around with quiet approval. "There now," she said. "That's a start." Jessica followed her gaze. A start. Not an ending, not a solution, but something steady, something real. And for the first time since she stepped through the door, the space didn't feel empty anymore.